Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are brand new to this particular show, The Pleasure Zone, this show is all about sex and bodies and pleasure and relationships and all the interminglings thereof. And this show has been going for almost 10 years. We'll be hitting our 10-year anniversary in July this year. So pretty stoked about that. And wow, has it been a long 10 years? No, actually it hasn't. It's actually been a delightful 10 years with so many topics that have really ranged from everything that could be physiological explanations to why you might have, erectile dysfunction, all the way to like pretty kinky things to like the history of sex toys. Man, we have talked about so much on this show. And today we're talking about a topic that isn't totally brand new for us, but we're going to have a little different take on it. So going back to the first season, I had a guest on where we talked about long distance touching. So 9 years ago, I had a friend of mine on talking about that. His name was Max. Is Max? He's still alive. And we talked about long distance touching. And so we're going to actually kind of touch on some of that on today's episode. I have talked about also different aspects of working with relationships that are long distance relationships, but also how do you have and keep intimacy in these long distance relationships in a way that keeps it fresh and interesting and keeps both parties feeling happy, right? That's key, is that everybody's coming out happy. So in this respect, we're going to be looking at a lot of the 5 love languages, but how can you do them from a distance? We're going to be looking at all of that. Why? Because many relationships end because of 3 main reasons. 1 is the lack of communication. 2 is sexual issues, like incompatible sexual desires. Like could even be that some people and somebody in the relationship is not interested in sex at all, and somebody is totally interested in sex all the time. And then finances is another big one, where sometimes, and I've heard this more, actually probably more in the last 5 years than I had before, or maybe people are just admitting it and talking about it more, is that the finances in relationship, not just long distance relationship, can become almost like a secret, where one partner has no idea what the other partner is spending money on. Where's the money going? I actually know people who have gotten divorced over the fact that one partner who was in charge of the money ended up spending tens of thousands of dollars, putting maybe even to some point over $100,000, putting the family into massive debt without ever telling their partner, and then trying to renegotiate loans on the house and sell this and do that and do extra work and hiding it. And that's super problematic. Why? Because ultimately that also stems back to lack of communication. So how do you communicate with a partner when you're long distance? Well, we're going to talk about that. So a lot of these issues in long distance relationships can become a bit different, or they can almost for some people, they can become more stressful because there isn't the one-to-one interaction where you can see the person's face or body language or pick up their energy as easily through, say, something like a text or written message, or the voice messages aren't showing expression, visual expression. So then you're missing sometimes the nuances where something might be a joke or meant to be funny, or there might meant to be sarcasm, but it doesn't come across because you're not seeing the person's expression or their energy. And then confusion sets in. So that definitely can create issues. Now, what we're looking to do is create happiness, right? I think all relationships, ultimately, people desire to have happiness in their relationships. They desire to be happy with themselves and then be happy with somebody else. Now, it's surprising, though, how many times people aren't aware that happiness starts with you. There's an I in happiness. It's so corny. But right in the middle of the word, if you look at it, like if you look at the spelling, there's like HAPP, that's 4 letters. There's an I in the middle, and NESS. I is in the middle of happiness. And I as in so that you can see into yourself, but also the letter I as in yourself. I in itself is an interesting letter just to look at because it is like it's a physical representation of the human body with a head and a line. And it used to have little arms and legs, but that's a whole other story. So I is in the middle of happiness. So you need to look at you need to look at your own happiness. You need to look at how you can then let that happiness flow out to all the others around you. So happiness in long distance relationships, in this particular episode, we're going to be specifically gearing it towards lovers. Keep in mind, if you don't have a lover or a long distance lover, but you have maybe you've got children that are far away, or you've got parents or somebody who's far away, and you're having a long distance relationship with friends or family, you can take a lot of these things into account, except for, of course, where I start telling you that, you know what, send some kinky pictures to your lover, except for those parts. Those are specifically for the lovers. But a lot of the other things around communication will apply in terms of being able to have better communication with people in your life, and to be able to take the time to either reevaluate the conversation you're having, to take a minute, say, I just need a minute to get back to you on that. Is that okay? Like, you can check in and you can ask, and you don't always have to be on the ball to respond. It's not actually thinking you have to be on the ball to respond is a stress response in the body. It's part of the fight or flight. I've got to fight. I've got to flight. Either you have to respond, or you can pause, get grounded. That's a little different than running away. Pause, get grounded, and let the person know that you will return to this conversation. You just need a minute to think about your response. So, how do we create happiness? First, we got to know what is making us miserable, because it's generally the conversations of where change can occur is we look at what's not working for you and let's see what can work for you. And sometimes the things that seem the most obvious are the things that we struggle with the most. And sometimes they're the things that we say the most too. Like, for example, and I say we as in because all people do this, they will repeat the thing that bothers them the most many times. And then they might even add things like, well, it doesn't really matter to me, but, and then so everything before that but is negated. Like, I'd really like to have this, but it doesn't matter to me. So yes, it does matter to you. And what way can there be negotiation so this can work? So if we're looking at the 5 love languages in particular, some of the things we need to do is create time and space for all those aspects of love languages. And what are those love languages? We've got quality time, acts of service, we've got touch, gifts, And we have that other one. There's always one, guys. There's always one that eludes me. And it's never the same one. It's usually the one I'm ignoring the most. So I will, if I write them out, I will remember. So touch, we've got words of affirmation, we've got gifts, we've got acts of service, and we've got quality time. There we go. We've got all 5. Yay! I did it. I know sometimes I just need to write it so I can see it. And how do we do these from a distance? So from a distance, touch, I mean, that sounds pretty off, right? Like how's that even plausible, possible? That doesn't even make sense. It is possible. And if you do go back and listen to the episode I did with my friend Max like years ago, in the first season, it was called Long Distance Touch. You'll hear us have a conversation about how you can actually do that. So when you start to practice, for one thing, if you are a practitioner of energy work in any kind, you probably have a better sense of this and capacity for it. And then what you do is you practice and you play and you see what works. So one of the things that I actually found out that I had the ability to do that was through complete accident many years ago, probably over 20 years ago. I was doing something one day and I was fantasizing about somebody while I was with somebody else. We'll just put it that way. And when I was fantasizing, the next time I saw the person I was fantasizing about, they literally called me out on it, called out the time of day that I was doing that, and explained to me exactly what I did, which was 100% true. So that was kind of mind-boggling to me. And I was like, well, I didn't know anybody was that aware or psychic or sensitive that they could feel that. I just thought this was me playing around, having fun, being silly. But full on, no, it was fully experiential, experienced by both people involved. And so from that, I kind of got a curiosity about, well, if I can do that, then let me sit back and see if I perceive that from others. And so it is a fascinating thing every once in a while to get pings and sensations of, oh, so and so's doing this. Oh, fascinating. Oh, I can feel that. Oh, that's cool. I don't get it as much now. Maybe I've just become accustomed to it, but obviously in the beginning of having this show, um, quite randomly, I would feel sensations from people. And then I would kind of note them and go, oh, at this time. And then I would ask, I'm like, hey, by any chance, did you listen to this episode and do blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I did. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not so crazy. So I got a lot of confirmation, which is also probably why I don't necessarily need to check in on that and like write it down anymore and get write down the dates, times, and what happened, because I've had the confirmation. I don't really need to prove it to myself anymore. But if it's something that you would like to prove to yourself, by all means, if you have a lover that's long distance, you can absolutely have a joyful, playful, fun experience. You can just let them know that, hey, you know what? How do you feel about, sometime when, say, for example, you're not on the job site? How about sometime during the night or day, whenever, they happen to be available? I just give you an energetic blowjob from a distance. What do you think of that? And they might be like, I don't know, that sounds nuts, but whatever. So as the gifter, you can absolutely get yourself into the mood, into the groove, into the absolute sensation that you are actually giving the blowjob to your partner, even though they're not there. They're not right in front of you. They are long distance. And the coolest thing is the chances are pretty high. The chances are pretty high that when you do that, if your partner is willing to be aware enough, they can actually feel it. So how do you give a long distance blowjob? Guys, it's just like identical in sensation to giving a live with a person body standing there blowjob. If you like getting on your knees and giving a blowjob, then you're gonna, while you're practicing for the first few times, you're gonna get on your knees and you are going to imagine your lover standing there. I can't say the C word out loud on this show because we'll get banned, but with the big C in hand and ready to rock and roll. And you energetically imagine, we'll say imagine, you absolutely perform oral sex as if they were there. Yes, it sounds crazy. Yes, what do you have to lose? How about you have some fun with it? Now, if you want to have sensation in your mouth to give you kind of like something to work off of, by all means, get a dildo. You might want to add some flavor to it because most dildos don't have the best, like they taste like silicone. They're not the best tasting, you might want to get some flavoring going on that. Make sure that it's compatible with your toy. Use that. Imagine your partner. It's a focus, right? It's like meditating. It's just like if you're sending healing to somebody and you're focusing and you're sending healing, their body will pick it up. And guess what? You can do it with sex too. We're going to head on that note, we're going to head to our first commercial break. And when we come back, we will be talking more about the fun things you can do and have in a long distance relationship to keep things fun and fresh right when we come back from this commercial break.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So in the first segment, I kind of tapped into the idea that we can play with the 5 love languages from a distance, and we absolutely can. And so one of the very first episodes that I did was on, it was in the first year, it was on long distance touch. And I know from my experience and from getting validation from people and also from experimentation that absolutely bodies can sense when you're having sex with them. So I highly encourage you that when you do this, that you get permission. If it's your lover, just say, hey, honey, how do you feel about me randomly giving you a blowjob or giving you oral sex or playing with your tits tonight? Like, how do you feel about that before bed? And they might be like, you know what? Cool, let's try this. And you don't have to be on like video with each other or anything. Get in your zone. Like this is like, guys, this is like healing. It's like meditation. And if you have any experience with doing any kind of energy work, this will be so much easier. If you don't have any experience with doing energy work, connect with me. I've got classes. I've got like a year-long training program that you can do. That's like once a week. There's a training that you do, or it's year-long. I think it's once a month, but it's almost got daily practice in there. And I do teach classes in person. And you know what? Follow your instinct. You might actually come up with something even more cool than I've mentioned. So yes, I started with the energetic blowjob because that was the one that I knew I could do. And then I thought, okay, so how do I do this I could do it from a distance. That I knew because I'd been called out on that. And then I thought, well, that's fascinating. I can do it from a distance. And I was like, really intensely focused. Can I also then do it in person without, actually having to, have any like, without having it look like I'm being a prostitute, right? Because actually giving a blowjob would make me a considered prostitute, I suppose, if I was getting paid for it. Anyway, I was trying to keep it within the confines of what is legal, and I don't know why I was doing that, but I was anyway. So, keeping it within the legal confines, I then started to see what that would be like, and so I had a few clients who were kind of curious, like how do you do that? And so it was absolutely not even necessary to. I didn't have to take my clothes off. They didn't have to take their clothes off. You can, just like you can elevate somebody's energy and get them, get their chakras balanced. You can absolutely focus energy on the genitals. You can move it around. You can pull it, play with it, suck it, have a good old time. Guys, the world is open. I think what long distance relationships can offer you is like a level of creativity that can sometimes be taken for granted when you're actually living with somebody. You're just like, oh yeah, we can touch each other. So here we go. When you're long distance, you can get super creative. And I think this is one of the most fun and creative things to do. Maybe I need to actually like teach a full-on class on this. Wouldn't that be fun? I wonder how many volunteers we could get as students for the class. How many students we get, but how many volunteers we'd get to actually say, I'll try that out. I'll try and have that energetic blowjob. By all means, go for it. I'll have that energetic spanking. Things like spanking might be a little bit different because of the impact on the body, and the body's actually looking for an impact, but I do know the blowjobs work. And I do know that other body, like tantalizing the body in other ways also works. Absolutely. And I also am fully aware that that is something that you need to, even though it's energetic and people are like, it's just energy. You absolutely need to ask permission, because if somebody has experienced any kind of sexual trauma, having that thrust on them will feel just as equally violent as having somebody thrust any kind of sex without permission on them anyway. So if there's no consent, there's no consent. There needs to be consent, both for energetic play, but also physical play, of course. And the energetic play can have just the same results. You can actually orgasm from energetic play. 100%. Know it, done it, been there. 100% you can orgasm, climax from energetic play. So good times. Now I'm getting myself all worked up and thinking and remembering and getting groovy and good stuff. I don't want to take up this entire show just talking about the energetics of touch and what you can do with it. But guys, just know that if you've done it physically in person, you can probably play with it energetically. Do remember to get permission to do this. Now, the other option for touch is you could do guided masturbations for your lover. Now, I know I'm taking this on a little bit of a spiritual flip flop, right? With the energy touch and with the guided masturbations. But guys, it can be so fun. So if, for example, you here, let's just like quick idea for a guided masturbation is that you actually invite your lover's body into something super tantalizing. So instead of just saying, hey, I just want to watch you jerk off. Okay, well, some guys will just do that just on demand, and that's cool. Some women might too, but I find that a lot of women need to be more invited, tantalized, and uh, feeling like there's been some foreplay, right? So if you're doing a guided masturbation for your lover, you might want to take them through a really sexy scenario, right? So it's like, just say, okay, so now what I'm going to do is start to undress you. And then have them actually like remove the clothes. You don't have to watch this on video. Just, guide them through. I'm removing your clothes and I gently stroke your nipple while I'm taking your shirt off. And as I do, my fingers just linger and they slide down your body and they stroke your belly and they find their way down your thighs. And they're avoiding everything that has to do with your vulva and your clitoris. Like, you don't want to use those words. I'm just using those on here because if I use the fun words, the fun, sexy, playful words, we'll get canceled. So definitely get the permission, take them through a guided masturbation. Their hands can actually be doing the touch that you're saying that you're doing, right? So, taking off the clothes, stroking the nipple, dragging the fingers down the body in a light touch, or it could be a, more dense touch. It just depends on how their body responds, what their body likes, right? So it's good to get feedback first of all, like what kind of scenario do you want? Do you want to be massaged? Do you want light touch? Do you want, get some content that you can share as your, what would you like the setting to be? What would you like the atmosphere of the setting to be? Would you like me to play music in the background? Would, you like to go get yourself a glass of wine first? Would you like to light some candles? Would you like to set the setting and then we play? So you get it ready. It's just as if your lover is there with you and you are having a really sexy, considered night where you're, have everything set up where it's really lovely and romantic and fun. And you can get all romantic and then do some spanking and some, some tying up the hands for fun, like whatever you're into. But get the scenario up and ready and prepare the space as if your lover is there with you, and allow them to walk you through with their voice, with their words, using words that you like, because it's important that you're using words that actually turn you on rather than turn you off. So using the words that turn you on to take you through a guided masturbation. And if you're comfortable being on film for that, get on film. If you're not comfortable being on film, you can always give them verbal or sound feedback, moaning, confirmation, like, oh, this is really turning me on, like anything like that. Say it in the voice that's, it's like, oh, this is turning me on. Like, say it in a way that you mean it. And stay on target, right? So you want to keep with the groove of what's going on. You don't want to all of a sudden the doorbell rings and you're like, oh my God, I have to get the door. Forget the door, stay with the groove. If your neighbor just died and somebody came to tell you, you're not going to be able to revive the dead neighbor. Just stay in the groove, be present, stay in the groove. The chances are whatever's going on, like if the phone goes off, the chances are if the person needs to go to the hospital, they just go. And other than that, like, what are you worried about? So take your time, be very present, because especially from long distance, when a person kind of pulls away, it can feel even lonelier. So you need to be extra present when you're in a long distance relationship and your partner might feel lonely, you might feel lonely. You want to be absolutely present for your conversations. If you can only handle 5 minutes of presence, your 5 minutes of full presence is way more valuable than 1 hour of disconnected, distraction. And if what can help you stay on focus is whether it's guided masturbation or whether it's energetic sex or whether it's even just learning how to do simple things together from a distance as a practice to get your energies in groove, you can actually do tantric breathing together from a distance. You can get on video and follow each other's breaths. So, you can breathe in and out together. You can have somebody be the leader of the breath and just follow each other's breath. And you want that breath to come in all the way and then go all the way down and really saturate your genitals and then bring it up to your heart and then have that connect to their heart and then bring it down. Saturate the genitals, saturate your heart, saturate your mind, have all these connection points going and have that energy move. So that is not a lesson in tantric, guys. So don't take that. That is a quick version of how breath can move, and you can absolutely take classes on that, and you can utilize what you learn in person from those tantra classes, and you can do that with your partner from a distance, so that you can connect through breath work. So you're meditating together, which can be really hot, actually, especially if you are purposefully doing tantric breath work where you're elevating your sexual energy and utilizing it for connection. So that can be beautiful. So we're going to head to our next commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to get on some of the other topics of how we can have better connections in long distance relationships. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network. And we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight, we're talking about those long distance relationships where sometimes people think, oh, it's just not going to work. Long distance relationships are so tough. I don't know how to make this work. And I'm suggesting that we can use those 5 love languages, put them to the test well, they're not really being tested, but we're going to utilize them in a way that maybe you haven't ever utilized them before. We talked about touch from distance in the last two segments because I got carried away with great ideas, and I could probably go on for a lot longer on that, but I won't, guys, because I got more to talk about. So words of affirmation is next in line, and words of affirmation from a distance. Let's just think about old-fashioned ways of doing words of affirmation. So back in the day, people would send love letters to each other, and there's something still so very sweet about getting mail that's, in your hand, something that's beautiful, something, for some people that would be like really romantic and lovely to be able to get mail. Maybe there's like a little picture in there, maybe there's a little something in there. I know looking back, like my grandparents, and I'm going to use them as an example for this, because my grandpa went away to university, and he was living, well, so from 1940 to 1947, my grandpa went to university in Ontario, Canada, and he was living about approximately like a 6-hour modern car ride from his girlfriend, my grandmother. So for 7 years, they had a long distance relationship, and he was away at school pretty much all year round for medical school, and especially because it was like during the war period. So I think they even stayed there during the summers, as far as I remember. But they wrote to each other every single day. So the mail was really good back then, and my grandmother could write to my grandfather. It would go on the train, and it would arrive from where she was living in the Niagara area. It would arrive in Kingston, where he was going to university, within about a 24-hour period, sometimes by that afternoon. So their communication was constant. They talked about everything. Their letters are still around, and maybe I'll ask my uncle if as far as I know, the letters were still around for a while. Maybe it'd be really fun if I asked my uncle if I could get a hold of those and read you guys some really lovely stories of my grandparents and their courting life, which was really sweet. And they saw each other on occasion, but their main form of communication was through writing. And they would tell each other about daily events, but then they would also tell each other about that they missed each other. And they weren't writing any smut or anything like that. They were just really sweet about all of the things that they were up to, how they loved each other, how they were thinking about each other, how they were looking forward to the next time they got to see each other. And you know what? There's like such sweetness in some of those. I mean, maybe they were writing coded language for all I know, because, they were like 18 to 25 at the time. Maybe they had their own teenage code that was like, I said I went to the mall. That meant, well, there was no malls. Maybe, my grandmother might have went, I went to the bakery. And what that really meant was that she masturbated. I don't know. Maybe they had code language. But the letters appeared really sweet. So it only dawned on me right now that they may have been writing in code. And now my mind is blown with what could they have really been writing about? I'm going to go with that my grandma probably didn't write in code. But long story short, words of affirmation can come in the old-fashionedest ways, which can be the writing, the letters. It can be, modern versions of writing letters, which are, emails. And one of the very first communications I had with my now husband was via email, and he wrote me the sweetest email ever. Still have it, saved it in my archives of my emails, and that was 13 years ago. And it was just the sweetest letter ever, and it had no reference to like, I want to stroke your nipples or suck on your clit. It didn't have any of that. But what he did write was stuff that was so endearing that made me want to jump him like on the first date. So there, if you have observed your lover and you realize what they need, you can give them what they need to get them so riled up and turned on without ever even having to say maybe words that you're uncomfortable with, or maybe use language that you're like, that's just not my way of talking. You can observe them and give them like crazy fun scenarios. You can write to them about things that you admire. So words of affirmation, in general, they aren't necessarily like the letters my grandparents wrote, although they would write things like "I love you" and "I miss you," blah blah blah. That worked, but that was, pretty limited. But words of affirmation are really good, and it depends on what the person needs to hear. It's like within that love language, there's also nuances and there's like dialects, right? So some people might need to hear how great they are at performing their job, and some people might need to hear how sexy they are and how hot, their lover makes them. That is also a form of words of affirmation. So just know that all the love languages, when we're talking about them, is that when you deliver them to the person and you deliver it in the way that they like to receive it, they'll be really thrilled. If you deliver somebody a love language in a way that is like, it's not their way to receive it, you're not going to get the same result that you're looking for. You're not going to get the result you're looking for. So I put it akin to like if you asked for a present, as a kid, if you asked Santa for a tricycle and then Santa brought you a ball, you'd be like, "What the what, Santa? Wanted a tricycle. I don't have faith in you anymore, Santa. I want the tricycle, not the ball." And so our lovers can do the same. Like you can just say, this is how I like to receive it. And if you can gift it to them in the way they like to receive it, amazing. And if you struggle with that, but you're negotiable, like you're willing to kind of work with it, you're just kind of uncomfortable, but you need to work at it, that's cool. Because if the words of affirmation do include sometimes naughty language that is, helps your partner feel loved, then it might be something that makes you uncomfortable at first. But if you're not totally, if if you don't totally reject it, then playing with it a little bit is going to be able to help you move into the groove with that. So find out, a lot of times you'll probably find out what words of affirmation your partner needs by listening to what they're struggling with the most. So if they're saying to you, "I really need to, like, what would make me so freaking happy is if I could just see you naked." So the words of affirmation they might need to hear, because what they're telling you is there's something lacking around the sex aspect or feeling sexy. So what they might need to hear is how hot and sexy they make you feel, or how hot and sexy they are to you. So they'll tell you, it's just that you got to listen, right? So that's where communication really helps. So if your partner is saying to you, "I had a really long day, I worked really hard," then what they might need to hear from you is, "I'm really proud of you. You work really hard. And I see all the effort you're putting into making us have contributing to us having a really great life. And I'm so grateful for all the work you do." So listen to them, because they're actually telling you what they want to hear from you and what they want from you. Partners will tell you in different ways, sometimes through complaints, sometimes through what sounds like nagging or repeating something over and over again. And you're like, "You keep saying this, it's driving me crazy." Okay, well, if you keep saying it and it's driving you crazy, they're saying it and there's something that they need to get out of it, right? So what is that something? Finding that out is usually pretty easy. You're just saying, like, what is the essence of that? Okay, they're asking for naked photos. The essence of that is they need to feel sexy and turned on. Okay, so if they need to feel sexy and turned on, maybe they don't feel sexy and turned on. What can I say to them or do for them that will help them feel sexy and turned on? Get where I'm coming from? So look at it. You can usually evaluate it, and you can always ask questions, which is great too, because sometimes it's really specific what your lover will need, and they can tell you, "What I need to know right now is, are you going to leave me? Because here I am away, we're away from each other. I don't feel so secure about it because I think you're like the hottest chick in the world, or I think you're the hottest dude in the world. So when I'm away from you, I feel like insecure because I think everybody should want you because I want you bad." Right? So then the words of affirmation might be like, "Wow, honey, you're like the hottest to me. So I don't even look at anybody else because all I think about when I close my eyes is you're sweet." I'm just going to bleep it myself. So You can fill that with anything you want. I'm just going to do my own beat there. So what I'm thinking here is that, like, words of affirmation, two things: find out the language they like to hear in terms of words, and like what words actually turn them on. How would they like it to be delivered? Would they like it by old-fashioned mail? What a lovely surprise. Would they like it by text? Would they like it by voice? Would they like to be on video so they can see you when you're saying that? Would they like, you to write every day in a diary and then give it to you at the end of the year to, give you one big gift of words of affirmation? Do you need it daily? Do you need gratitude on a daily basis? Words of affirmation can be done in so many different ways. So it's really important to know what your partner needs, especially from a distance, when they need reassurance. And if they're not feeling so secure and they just need some reassurance. And you probably need reassurance too, because it's not usually just a one-way street. So if one partner needs reassurance, usually both do. And it's finding out in what way and how you can deliver that. So the words of affirmation. Now, gifts can be, just as easy as ordering something online. It can be that easy. Gifts can also be something that, while, you're away from each other, that you've considered doing something that would be a great gift for your partner. Sometimes the gifts can include things like buying a holiday for a weekend away, and then you've got your gift, but you've also got your quality time put together, which could lead to touch and sexy time and all kinds of stuff. So there's a variety that can happen there. So gifts when you're away can come in different ways. And one of the ways is photos, absolutely, depending on what your partner's into. Your partner might be really into kink and just like things that are not so common. Like they might really love, I don't know, I'm going to go with a picture of a clean purse, because that might really turn them on. Why? Because that is actually a kink. And so the world of what turns people on is vast. And so knowing what turns your partner on is helpful. And then giving a gift in relation to that is also helpful. So, if your partner's been talking about, let's get some sex toys, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't really know what I want, blah, blah, blah. If you don't know what you want, it's a great time to go and investigate, see what's out there, see what's available. And then, you can always contact me through my website, milicajelenic.com. I can go through a whole list of different sex toys with you, benefits of them, and which one might be the most beneficial for you, for sure. I didn't even realize that it's time for my next break, guys. Where is the time going while I'm talking about sexy talk with your partner from like distances and gifts? And okay, we're going to head to our next commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So I briefly tapped into like gifts that you could do from through distance relationships. It's really just the same kind of gifts you could also give in person. You can always order things and get them sent to your partner, whatever it is they like. Gifts is not the highest on my list of love languages, so it's not one that I dive into a lot. Acts of service is pretty up there for me. It's probably why I'm in a career that is of service to people. And one of the things that you can do for acts of service if you're away is, I'll give you an example from my own life, is that, say, for example, if my husband went away and all the things that he does around the house, in a way that he could gift me acts of service when he's not there is to, say, hire somebody to do the things he does. Like, although I don't mind cutting the grass, I also don't necessarily have the time to do that. So it would be to hire somebody to do some of the things that he does. That would be an amazing act of service so that the things still get done. Also, he does a lot of acts of service. It's one of his primary love languages. So I would miss out a lot of the acts of service if he was at a distance, because that's one of his primary ways to show love. So building things and doing the lawn and feeding the cats and feeding the birds and all the things that he does. So having somebody hired to do that if your partner's away can be helpful. And there are acts of service you can still do from a distance, like things like helping pay the bills, or even helping out with like research and finding out what needs to be done if you're planning things in the future. All the research stuff is like an act of service as well. So I'm going to move on from that because I don't have a lot of time left here, and quality time is really important, and that's next up on our list. So quality time from a distance, and then quality time in person. This is where things get really important. So quality time from a distance is when you can allot your time, right? So if you have a lot of things going on, so you got financial things you need to look after, set aside the time to just have the talk about finances. Like, you know what, this Friday, can we have a meeting about the finances, half an hour? Let's get her done. After that, can we have a date for like an hour where you allot that time? That half an hour is just for finances. Do not drag the finances into the sexy time. Do not drag the sexy time into the finances. They need to be absolutely categorized so that you are focused and your energy is present for those things, and you're not distracted, and you're not just thinking, when are we going to talk about such and such? No, you've allotted your time. Schedule it. Especially with long distance stuff, it's really key to have a schedule so you can rely on things like, when am I going to talk to them? When am I going to see them? All that kind of stuff can be really helpful with quality time, is to actually have time designated to be with each other and to be present with each other. And whether you're, putting your cameras out to eat a meal together, so you're watching each other while you're eating, or, you happen to have your camera on while you go to bed so that you can say goodnight to each other. Whatever it works for you for distance, for quality time, definitely include more of it, and make sure that you've allotted time for it and you stick to your times on those things. So when you're in person, that quality time and all those love languages will come back so much easier, because sometimes there's an adjustment period when you finally come back together again as lovers. There can be an adjustment time of awkwardness, like readjusting to the space and each other, any changes you might have gone through emotionally while you were away from each other. So if you can keep it going, keep your love languages rocking while you're separated from each other physically, then when you come back together, it's going to be so much smoother. And the quality time too is to make sure that when you are together, when you know that you're going to have time together, to really make it count. So I encourage you to make a list of things that you'd like to do together. Each of you make a list, and then make sure that every time you get together and you actually have quality time together, that you're doing something on that list, so that you are hitting some targets, and that what you're saying is, you matter to me, and what you care about and what you'd like to do matters to me. Let's do that together, because that's important to me, and so are you. So remembering that your partner counts even when they're far away, and your love languages count even if they're far away, or even if they're 45 minutes away, but you're not seeing them all the time.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.